Hello and welcome to Your Money, Your Life, Black Enterprise podcast series on all things financial wellness. I'm your host, Alfred Edmond Jr., Senior Vice President and Executive Editor at Black Enterprise. And I have as my guest today, they're good friends. And just before we came into the studio, they told me the story of how they met. I knew them separately as separate entities, highly respected entities. But once again, Black Enterprise does it again. But we'll save that story. Listen, today we're continuing our conversation about the importance of families, couples, however you define families, talking about money, making wealth conversations, money conversations a part of the overall family conversations across generations, because we know statistically that families that at least can have the conversation, regardless of educational background, regardless of literacy or illiteracy, whatever those, we know that if you can just talk about it, you get better outcomes. And so we've been doing this series on Your Money, Your Life, talking to couples about having that conversation, how they have that conversation, and the things that you might be able to do to start those conversations in your own family, in your own household. Again, my guests today are known quantities to me. It's never a secret when I have friends on the show. We have the one and only Kimo Bentley of Kimo Bentley All Natural Beauty, an aesthetic clinic, all things health, beauty. You can see she lives her brand. If I look what's on the screen. And we have our good friend, not only a friend of mine, but a friend of Black Enterprise, veteran marketing and branding strategist, sales and marketing executive, writer, author, Daron Pressley. Longtime deep Black Enterprise family members know him as one of the main storytellers for our much lauded BE Modern Man campaign that celebrates Black men at all walks of life, a kind of a precursor to what we have now as the Black Men Excel Summit event. Listen, guys, I could talk on and on about you both, but welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us. We're excited to be here. We're excited to be able to be a part of this Black Enterprise, this conversation, and really take what we've learned and are still learning, and just really help each other, continue to help each other, and help anyone that's listening to the program.
Well, speaking of still learning, tell me about how you met, because I did not know until you guys told me. Again, I knew both of you, followed you both, both on social media and to some degree in real life as we got to know each other. But I didn't know that we had anything to do with you guys coming together. I just remember seeing on social, they're getting married. I was like, okay.
Yeah, so it's Black Enterprise does it again, did it again. Back in 2015, Black Enterprise had a series called BE Good Life, wonderful series, and Black Enterprise had its first event, just really promoting and exemplifying and sharing what the BE Good Life means to people. And at that event in New York, beautiful, intimate event, that's where we crossed paths. At that event, did not know we were going to be there. And it's funny because I actually was the DC area, so I wasn't going to actually go just because of weather and stuff. It's like, but I said, hey, I got to support my Black Enterprise family. I want to continue to make sure I'm present and there. And so I went, and I think she shares a similar sentiment where...
Yeah, I had to be the wingman for a good friend of ours that is also part of Black Enterprise. And she begged me to go that night. She's like, please come with me. I'm like, it's cold. I think it had just stopped snowing or something like that. And I said, okay, fine. I'll just go for maybe an hour or so. I'm going to sit in a corner so no one would talk to me. And that was pretty much it.
Yeah, that's where we met. And I will say that was clearly it was a great event. But outside of that, it was phenomenal. Black Enterprise puts together some just phenomenal events that aren't only just events in terms of socializing and networking, but we're able to actually meet people, actually take those meetings and discussions you have at those events and carry those into our everyday careers and lives and work, and so that's just another example of why we need to be at the Black Enterprise events.
All of them, they're so worth it, because I was in the middle of saying, how does the good life explain what the good life is? And he interrupted my interview. he interrupted the interview, and I was like, who is this guy? What is he about? Why is he talking while I'm trying to talk? It wasn't like oh my God, he looks so great. It literally was like, who are you? Like, why are you interrupting my interview? And the person that we both knew introduced him, and it was like history after that. Real nice and organic. It was a really good meeting.
Really good.
Well, very, very good history and your energy. Again, I mean, I know and respect you both. We know we know how life can be, and we watch things happen and don't happen on social media. But this was a case where like two people that I have a lot of respect for, who are genuine, who are have a lot of great. And I'm like, you always when you see those people meet again. I didn't know the backstory, and you find out that again. Oh man, that's great. Those are. Where sometimes you look at one person, you say, that's great for him, but I don't know. Or it's great for her, but I hope, So I got to say, as a fan of both of yours, as individuals, it was actually a nice thing to see you guys come together. And I'm blessed to now hear the backstory of how you guys met. But listen, talk to me now about, now your parents, you're obviously spouses, you're also, somebody's son and daughter. You have there's family dynamics around how you relate to money, which is a big part of what this show is about. Let's start with what you guys do for a living and how you brought that together. Again, a successful entrepreneur, obviously a veteran sales and marketing executive, all kinds of skill sets. Both of you had a history and a career and a background that led to what you do today. So let's talk about what you guys do now.
Yeah.
Sure.
You want to start?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm the owner and founder of Kimo Bentley Aesthetic Clinic, Med Spa, and brand new Kimo Bentley Academy. And I have been in the beauty space, aesthetic space for 22 years now, just educating people on how to take care of their skin, especially men and women of color. We do a lot of services as well as teach. We provide workshops and other services where you can learn about your skin and get your skin cleared at the same time. I'm also a creator, so I make and manufacture my own skincare products. And that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Yeah. And on my end, and it's just so interesting before, even as you said before, Alfred, when people come together and when they join and you never know how that synergy may be or how your part of your life can just for whatever reason fit just so nicely into the part of someone else's life. And for me, my background is in sales and marketing. Worked for Fortune 500 companies, Kellogg's. I've worked for companies that had tremendous growth, such as And One earlier on in my career, the basketball marketing company that just saw tremendous growth. And so when I think about Kellogg's and my career path at Kellogg's, where the bulk of my career was, and in that consumer packaged goods industry, and then meeting Kimo, who is in that consumer packaged goods industry with her products. And so, just being able to understand that sales side of that business and understanding the consumer packaged goods side of that business, where when at one point we had distribution in Walgreens in the Northeast. And so understanding, the buyers and the categories and those things, it just became a perfect marriage. And as I continue now in sales roles, consulting roles, working with pharmaceutical companies, building out sales teams, sales strategies, it just kind of stays right in alignment with being able to help her with her business as she continues to grow, and also continue to develop my skill sets in that sales lane, in that strategy lane, strategic marketing lane, to help others continue to get better at selling their products to consumers as well.
You guys hit on a bunch of points that could take this interview, this conversation, all kinds of directions. Because, I'm passionate about mentorship. I mentor a lot of entrepreneurs. I'm passionate about healthy relationships, whether you're talking about, romantic partnerships, business partnerships, etc. And through those confluences of passions and interests, I've learned a lot of things about what makes certain partnerships work. And you may represent something I've seen in other successful husband and wife teams, many of which I've interviewed for Black Enterprise. but not even just, husband and wife teams. When I look at effective partnerships, usually, and this is not a strict boundary between these two ideas, but usually one partner is really great at ideation and the other one is really great at execution, meaning that, Kimo has to produce something, obviously, products and other things. But there has to be, almost an ideation partner. That's someone that can get into the strategy. Now, I'm sure both of you have to know a lot about both. But I've always seen successful partnerships, and this goes beyond marital partnerships. When I see two partners that seem to work well together, it's almost like one person's really good at this kind of planning and ideation and strategy, and the other person's like, yep, now I can take that strategy and produce something tangible to bring to the marketplace. And I can say straight up, I'm the ideation guy. I have a million ideas and none of them happen because I won't get around to actually doing them. So, but it's just one of those observations. I've seen it over and over again in different types of business partnerships where you always know somebody's got to think of it. Every product, service is an idea first, but then it has to get out of somebody's head, out of off the paper, off the deck, into the marketplace and actually give a chance to somebody to pay for that. And so it's just interesting how I see that dynamic, especially when I see it in married couples who are obviously pursuing career agendas, like you said, that complement one another, which is the ideal, and make each side better. Fast forward into what you believed or thought about money based on your respective backgrounds. Was it talked about in your family? Let me give you a little bit of a framework that I've used in other interviews. One of my good friends, a mentee, Tara Jackson, wrote a book called The Four Financial Languages. And the book was about how if couples understood the financial language that their partners were speaking, a lot of the conflicts around money would be lessened. And so the Four Financial Languages, I wrote the foreword for the book, full disclaimer, so I know the book very well, is that most people have our primary financial language. They're either savers, investors, givers, or spenders. And that while we all have probably elements of all four, as they say with the love languages, that depending on your background, your upbringing, your feelings, your beliefs about money, like I know I'm a saver. I came from a single mother who knew how to pinch a penny. And I didn't really start appreciating things like investing until I got the Black Enterprise and realized you can't save your way to wealth. Sooner or later, you got to do something to build. But respectively, I'll start with you, Kimo. What would you describe, and don't feel limited by the framework I just laid out, as kind of your relationship to money growing up and which you might be brought to your relationship to in your marriage?
So I would say that growing up, it was you work an honest job and you pay the bills, stay out of debt, pay for everything in full, and do not take out any sort of credit. So that's pretty much how I lived my life for a very long time, just being debt free, credit free, and having the ability just to pay for something outright. And if I could not do that, I would not give myself that particular item, whether it's a car, a house, a piece of clothing. If I couldn't afford it in that moment, I would not purchase it, not even on credit, because I didn't have the tangibles at that moment to do it. So that's what my notion was, just paying for everything outright.
Has that changed at all, especially since you've become an entrepreneur, or is that
Oh,
pretty much?
yes, it absolutely has changed. I understand the importance of credit. Now I understand utilization, paying things off, paying them back. And it's funny because when Daron and I got together, he was asking me about credit. And I'm like, okay, well, I pay for everything outright. I don't have any debt, no student loans or anything. I would always pay for everything either in cash or straight out of my bank account. So when we got together and we started having that conversation, he's like, oh, why don't you just get an unsecured credit card and see how you do with that? Go put some gas in the car. And I'm so obsessed with paying my bills. I would use the card, and right after I got the gas, I would go right to the Capital One and pay it right off, just so that I could have a good night's rest and not be able to have that lingering over my head. So that's kind of like what the game that I played for a little bit in the earlier stages.
Yeah, I'm like you, Kimo. I'm like I get a little anxious when I've learned that I got to be more flexible, but I'm like, because that's how my mama was. But see, again, my mother passed away in 2018. But my point is, for Black women and for women in general, remember, you couldn't even get access to credit until the late 70s.
Yep. So
the idea of carrying debt, I tell people there's a reason why we have cultural feelings about money. Mm-hmm. If you are, in my mother's case, a single woman, it was like, no, you didn't borrow. Yes. You paid as you went, which made her really good at managing budgets, but didn't necessarily prepare me for a world of, like you said, managing credit.
Yeah.
What about you, Daron?
So similar, but a little bit different. I grew up with my father primarily. My father and two older brothers. And as a youngster, I could always remember my dad paying things with cash. I did see him use a debit card. I actually got my first debit card at 8 years old. I got my first bank card, savings card, debit card. And so kind of learned early that banking was a thing, that banking, checking, savings, those were things to be mindful of. Now with my dad, I always saw him paying for things, and I'll never forget, I remember going into Prudential at one time with him. We went into Prudential. It was a new home. It was a new home that he was purchasing, and I had the opportunity to go in there kind of during that process of that home buying, that process. And I'll never forget, I saw his credit score, and it was like 780 or 790, and I'll never forget seeing the range on the paper. You had a range from 0 to, I think it was like 820 or 850. And I looked at where his number was, and I said, that's really high. And that just always stuck with me. And I think, like so many of us, you never really got talked to about credit. It was pay your bills, don't go into debt, very similar to Kimo. Don't get into debt. Don't get credit cards, and if you do, don't use them because you don't want to go into debt. So we were never really educated around that part of it, but I'll never forget seeing that, and I knew that meant a great thing because of the result that happened with that home buying process. And I that wasn't his first home he purchased, but that just really stuck with me, that credit score. And it was one of those things where it's like, well, I want my credit score to be that high at some point, because I saw the effect that it had on his ability to purchase. And that was when I was maybe 12 years old. So I didn't connect it to that depth, but I just knew that meant a good thing. And so kind of fast forward as we go into my life now and as an adult, I was always conscious and aware, as a college basketball athlete, and playing in Europe, and so I always was aware of money. I was always aware of finances and not going backwards into debt. And so that was just always something that I kept with me to stay on top of my finances. Not to say I never had any challenges, because I had, but it was always kind of in the forefront to understand where my money is, where it was, and where I want it to be. And also with credit, to Kimo's point she made earlier, when we first talked about just credit, credit was always a big thing for me, because back when I was 12 years old, right, I just saw that score and I just knew that meant something great.
Right.
I knew that meant something great.
So let's fast forward to the present. I'm much older than both of you guys, but my experiences are somewhat similar. I mean, but your first debit card was, my mother had us on a passbook banking account, so I knew how to. Well, yep, this much went in, this much went out. This is the balance. I knew that coming out of elementary school, because again, my mother taught us how to handle money, but there was other aspects that I didn't have access to, and my mother didn't have access to. So it's just very interesting to talk about the evolution that many African Americans have to go on, because no matter what we were taught in the home, when we achieve educationally, professionally, entrepreneurially, we are going into uncharted territory. I used to say my mother prepared me to go into a foreign country that she would never visit. in terms of the things that I've been able to do and see professionally and economically. That's it. Let's fast forward to the present. Now, you guys went to a Black Enterprise event. A whole bunch of people will be registering for our events now because they think we're going to meet their perfect partner. But how did you guys approach your early conversations? Now you're a couple. Now you're united, and you got to make decisions about how do you move forward as an entity around finances. For some people, they're like, "No, we ain't talk about it. We ain't never." I know people have been together, 50 years, and they're like, "We don't talk about it. We just try not to fight about it, but we don't talk about it." And then so there's a wide spectrum. But how did you guys decide to approach that as a couple and ultimately as heads of families of a family?
So moving in together was one of the biggest steps that we actually did. And as I previously said, we had that conversation about credit, and he was questioning me, just asking basic information on suggesting, I should say, on the unsecured credit card. So after that conversation, it kind of like opened up me questioning more of that in terms of me saying, why do I need that? If I have the money, I'll pay for it. So I was very reluctant. I'll be very honest with you. I said, no, I'm okay. If I have the money, I'll get it. If I don't want to do this. I let my guards down and I went ahead and I got the card, paid it off. And then we had this conversation again. It was a very casual conversation. It wasn't like, okay, meet me at 10 o'clock in the kitchen. We're going to have this conversation. We would periodically have little spurts of financial conversations throughout the day, throughout the week, and say, hey, how do you feel about this? Or how do you feel about that? And he had asked, what's your credit score? And I literally said, honestly, you know what? I'm not really sure. Why don't we go and check on that? And what my credit score was like, I think at that time it was maybe about 650. Yeah, it was around 650 at that point. And he said, oh, there are ways that we can increase the score by doing other things, such as getting you higher amount credit cards. And I took a chance. I'm a risk taker. One thing that I would say in a relationship, someone has to be the risk taker, and I am that person. So I said, okay, let's go ahead. Let's do it. Let's get another credit card that would have a bigger amount on it and see how I'm able to handle that. And as the conversations daily and weekly went by, him and I shared the progress on that.
Yeah.
There's a couple of themes that we always hit on without me trying on this series. Again, it's not always about couples. I've had everybody from financial behavioralists to traditional financial advisors to entrepreneurs. So, but one of the things that have become a recurring theme that you hit on, Kimo, in terms of just what you just shared, is that there are certain elements that need to be present for healthy conversation in general and healthy financial conversations in particular. Mm-hmm. One is trust.
Yeah.
That, you guys didn't have to agree to be able to trust each other. Mm-hmm. Two is a sense of safety, because small conversations only turn into bigger and more in-depth conversations if the small conversations don't leave anybody feeling threatened, vulnerable, condemned, judged, ridiculed, shamed. And so one of the things that's come out even in this series I've had a conversation I had with other couples is the degree to which trust and safety, which of course has helped important for relationships in general, are critically important for, encourage. Like I said, courage to take the risk. The courage for Daron to even question what you're doing. Your willingness to say, well, this is the way I like to do it, but I'm open to. And I tell people over and over again, and I've learned it from experts as well, if those elements don't exist, it almost doesn't matter how much literacy you have and how much experience you have and how much you know, because it could have been very easy for you to say, Kimo, yeah, full stop, bruh. I'm a successful entrepreneur. I've been doing this. It's working. I love you, but that's not what you know what I'm saying? I just seen it happen. And I think it's so important to reiterate for the Your Money, Your Life audience, the importance of creating safe spaces to at least have the conversation, because it gets even more complicated when mama doesn't want to tell you where the insurance policy is. And daddy's like, what the will is none of your business. And, the kids are like, you know what I'm saying? if
Absolutely.
you can't create safe spaces, and the safe spaces usually start with the husband and wife who are the nucleus of the family conversation. It's just everything you say, Kimo, about your willingness to even listen, and Daron, but Daron not saying to you, and I'm imagining it, what do you mean you don't know your credit score? Or what do you mean it's only 650? You should be doing better than that, as opposed to that's good, but here's some things we can do to get it. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And creating goals, I think, was something
Yeah.
else that
That's what
we
I was going
did
to
that
mention.
was like huge for
Yeah.
us. I'm not talking about just right now, but the next 5 years, the next 10 years, like we would do the goal setting, and that would help open up that conversation to the financial aspects of the relationship.
Yeah. That's what I was going to just touch base on. As we were having those conversations early on, it was also more about, all right, if we're planning to come together, live our life together, build a family together, and also build a business together and just build our skill sets and develop, um, what are some of our goals that we have? And if we have certain goals financially, how are we going to achieve these goals? Because I'm me at the end of the day, economics is major. Money is major, and money is major because it's a tool that we can utilize to get to certain goals that we have. Also, a tool that we can utilize to give back, to help. And so, it money has to be. It's a driver. It has to be a driver. And the better that we were able to realize that that driver also contributed to the plans and the goals, the easier it became to say, okay, well, if we have a goal as simple as you want to get 3 pair of shoes this year that cost $1,000 a piece, what financial goals or where are we at financially that's going to enable us to be able to do that either together or individually? Or if I want to individually be able to get you 4 pair of Giuseppe's or Louboutins, where am I at financially to be able to do that and not do that at without having to get rid of something else or be struggling in another area. And so just kind of having those goals for the business, having those goals for our family, having those goals for, okay, I was a homeowner. I wanted to purchase a home together with Kimo this time. So what does that look like? What does our credit score need to be to get to that point? And I'm honest and transparent. I had a point in my life where I had great credit. And then there was a point where my credit score went down significantly because of some financial things that happened. And so I had to rebuild that credit back up to the point where I know it should be at. And there's some things that I had to do financially. There's some things that I had to do internally, self-reflection things to get back to that point. So I came from a place where I knew how important credit was, and I knew how important it would also be for us together, but also for her individually with her business. And as she was trying to and working to grow her business, I knew that credit was going to be a critical thing for her when looking to grow her business, and for when she needed funding, outside funding for her business, whether it's bank funding, business loan funding. I knew that she would need that, but I also knew that she would have to have a really good credit score to be able to get those loans or to get that funding that she would need to continue to build the business.
You've
So,
already, both of you already hit on one of the things I want to make sure we talk about, which is shared goals.
mhm.
But you both just did a great job of that. Because if you can focus on shared goals and everybody can agree on the goals, then the natural conflicts and the differences can always be brought back. But do we agree on what we're trying to do? And is what we're talking about going to get us to where we want to go? And if you have shared goals, then you can work through inevitable conflict. Let's not make this a fairy tale. There's two different people, different
Yep.
ways of thinking, two different sets of
Yep.
emotions and fears and goals and dreams, and you're bringing it together. So I always tell people, but if you can agree on the goals and you can talk about the goals, and to be honest about your goals. That's how we
Yep.
don't pretend you have a goal you really don't have. If
Yep.
it's not the real goal, but you think it's the right thing to say to get the other person to do what you want to do. I mean, yeah,
Yep.
we're all grown. been played these games, but it doesn't work if you're going to get to this common goal. But the other thing that I hear you both saying, it is important, obviously, they're early in a relationship to establish it, but I tell people whether it's at the beginning of a relationship, the middle relationship, or later in the relationship, sooner or later it's about values. And you two seem to have, whether you came to it when you met with each other or you established some new ones, shared values that I'm sure will impact your children and future generations. Talk to me about family values and what that means to you in terms of the journey that you're on together to achieve your financial goals.
Yeah, I think that, and as you said, there's no fairy tale.
Right.
There's no fairy tale. It's not always peaches and cream and everybody's excited about the financial conversations and the discussions, but we do have shared values, and we talk about our values. Like, how do we want our children to live? How do we want our children to grow up? What do we want them to know about finances, as well as traditional education, as well as just physical activity and mental health? How do we want to together? How do we want to have our household run? And one thing that we discuss and we talk about is that just as much effort as we put into our careers and in our business, we have to put that amount of effort into our family. And we have to have rituals, we have to have routines that we build with our family, because if those rituals and routines with our family are hectic and haywire, best believe that the business, the career, all of that stuff will be impacted by that. And so one thing that we talk about, those things that we agree on, we don't agree on everything. We don't agree on everything, but I think we do a good job of, it's not about who's right. It's about what's going to work. And so whether that's talking about our finances, whether it's talking about spending, whether it's talking about who takes care of this bill or that bill, it's not about who's right, but it's about what's going to work for us and the goals that we have laid out. And we share our goals, and there's some goals she may have that I don't even know about yet, and that's okay. And I'm okay with not knowing some of those personal goals that she may have that are just goals that she keeps to herself. But I also trust that those personal goals, somewhere they're probably in alignment with the overall vision that we have for having a successful family, getting to reaching just certain levels of success that we want to attain together. But yes, individually, there still are personal goals that you have. There's things that you want to accomplish on your own. And I think just recognizing that and being okay with that really helps us be able to be together, but also, kind of have that separation as well. I will say this, Alfred. I asked her the other day, I said, this is one of, if you're listening, this is one of our financial bump heads. I said, we both have an Amazon Prime account. And I said, we live in the same house. And wouldn't it make sense just to use one, and then you could just order whatever card? And what was your answer?
My answer is no. My answer was straight up no, because I want to order what I ordered. Darren is a person that likes to ask a lot of questions. Oh, do you need this? Why do you think you need this?
I don't look at Amazon. I don't even look at Amazon.
No, but for purchases, 90% of the purchases that I get is for the spa.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, but didn't you just get that? Or why would you get that? Or is there somewhere else we can get this? I don't want to risk hearing that. So I would rather us have separate accounts. It's the same thing with the audiobooks.
But Alfred.
Same exact thing.
So Alfred, check this out. But I see everything that comes to the house.
It doesn't matter.
And so I know we get Amazon deliveries every few days. A lot of it's for the business. And I know that. And even if it wasn't, I'm just like, well, why don't we consolidate? We could pay $15.99 or whatever it is. And you can still order what you want, but at least that $15 you can put it on into this.
All I will say is you are demonstrating something I think is very positive. I tell couples, as someone who's been married 3 times, Love is when you can live with no.
Yeah.
Love when you say, yeah, he said no, but I'm with him.
Yeah.
Everybody can live with the yes. I tell
Yeah.
you, the biggest mistake I said we make is we think, oh, it's no. If you still can live with the no,
Yeah.
you still can build with the no, you can still move forward with the no. Like you said, you don't have to be right. You don't, then you're good. And so I'm glad you were both transparent about that. That it ain't, she's like the straight answer is no. I ain't
And I'm
doing
like, cool. I'm like, all right, well, I guess I'll just.
And he still asked at least
And I
once.
was like, I would,
You ain't really cool. I
but
can see it now.
you can charge on my car. You can charge it to me. I'll take the hit on the Prime account. You can charge it to me.
He's still
Y'all
asking once a
not
week.
getting me to take a side because I ain't getting in trouble on the record. But listen, the time we have left. But listen, I don't. All jokes aside, I mean, you guys are literally living out, in real time, the message that we try to share on the show all the time. Because conflict is inevitable.
Yeah.
Differences are inevitable. Disagreements are inevitable. The whole nature of trust, in this case, we're talking about in the financial context, is that you don't know if it's going to go right. You don't know. I tell you, it's not real trust if you have a guarantee. Like if there's an ironclad guarantee, what are you trusting?
Yeah.
You
don't have to.
The trust is needed. The transparency is needed. The courage is needed. The capacity for risk is needed. The capacity to forgive. Because one of a couple I interviewed talked about a plan they both agreed to, and it went horribly wrong.
Yeah.
It was like it didn't go anywhere the way we had both agreed. Because agreement is no guarantee. Yeah. And the wife said the reason why we are still stronger than ever is because when things don't go right, we turn to each other, not on each other. And that capacity to say, like you said, life be life, and even if you guys do everything right with the business and with the career, we got this economy, there's all these variables that swirl around outside of your relationship that no matter what you do, you can't control. Absolutely. So your capacity, when we talk about financial wellness, especially multi-generational financial wellness, and obviously the example you're setting for your children, which is going to, just like we got stuff from our parents, going to go to your children, really goes into what happens when the answer is no. How do you move forward when the answer is no? And it could be something as small as, no, we're not merging Amazon accounts. Or it could be something as big as, no, I don't want to sell my business yet. Or I do want to sell my business now. And we have to work out what that means for the family. Yep. Listen, in the time that we have left, and I hope, I try to give you guys a heads up, I'm going to ask you this. If there are couples like you, either about to get married, maybe they're already married, but they really want to do a better job of having financial conversations in their relationship and their families going forward, what would be 2 or 3 things you would advise them to do to have those conversations? Not how those conversations are going to come out, but at least get started to have those conversations. Because once you get started, it tend to take a life of its own with, growth and trust and courage and all those things that we talked about is necessary.
Yeah, I'll start with this. We all have baggage. Some of us have a handbag or a backpack. Some of us has 8-piece set of luggage. But we all have some sort of baggage when we come into any relationship, whether it's new, existing, we still may have some baggage, but we all have something that we're carrying with us into the start of a relationship and as we're going through that journey of being in the relationship. So, it's kind of like, okay, how do we unpack those bags? And one thing that piece of advice that I would give is, and Kimo kind of alluded to it earlier, but I wouldn't necessarily say that you have to schedule a 5:00 p.m. on Tuesday. We're going to sit down at the dinner table and we're going to have a conversation about credit, about your personal finances, and about what's in your bank account. But I would say get outside. If it's a nice day, go for a walk, or if you go for a walk inside the mall somewhere, and just start to have those natural conversations, organic conversations as you're taking a walk. And it's less pressure. It doesn't seem as threatening, and it may not seem as complicated when you're walking through the mall and it's Christmas time and you're saying, hey, what do you think we should spend for our daughter this Christmas? How much do you think would be a good amount to spend? And that alone can start a conversation about finances, because she may say, oh, I don't care how much we spend. We can spend $1,500 on her for a jacket. And I might say, well, I think that may be a little excessive. Where can we go to look at some jackets, and let's look at some pricing? Something like that, just to start the conversation. And then we can start to get a better idea of how each one of us may be thinking individually, and then how we can come together to say, okay, I think this is maybe appropriate. Let's start here.
Right. Okay, sounds good. Man, I love that. I've heard that before, that if it turns into almost like a chore or inquisition, then people come to the meeting guarded. They come to the conversation like, okay, I need to have my arguments ready. I need to have. But if it's more, let's just share and talk and let the conversation. Again, I always tell you, it's more important to have the conversation, even if they're in little snippets and small bites, than it is to set up a conference.
Boardroom.
And I know families that do the big family conference, but they didn't start out that way. Most of them didn't start out that way. Most of them started out with, let's just get to the point where we can talk on a regular basis. And then eventually it's, okay, let's, because we're busy, let's put the day on the calendar to make sure it happens. And then eventually, let's bring the kids into it. But if it never happens, you're never going to get to the boardroom if you can't even walk through the mall and talk about the cost of the coat.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Two things that I could definitely say. I'm a writer, so that's why I'm looking down. Is one of them is focus on the future, discuss shared goals like buying a house, retirement plan, a really big vacation. I think that was one of the easiest things that we started conversation on, is creating a goals sheet. Daron didn't go deep enough into that, but we have a sheet that's like 100 goals. No matter how ridiculous they may seem, just write as many goals as you can think about. And at that moment, that's when the conversation can open up, and then you can say, okay, so how much money do you think is needed for this type of project on this large scale? That's a more lighthearted, easier way of alluding to the conversation that you want to have with your significant other. That was one of the best ways that we've done it. We even do that up till this day. Write the goals and then say, okay, how much money we looking at, how much money we're talking. And that's where we can continue to dive deeper in that. The second thing is ask open-ended questions. By asking open-ended questions, such as, how do you feel about A, B, C, and D, makes it non-threatening, makes things easier to relay to somebody else, as opposed to saying, you should do this or you should do that. Ask the open-ended questions, and that makes a lighthearted conversation and less conflict.
Yeah. And I'll say one more thing, Alfred, before we wrap up. And Kimo, sometimes I'm a little extreme, but keeping really strict accounts. We
didn't get to talk about that.
Keeping strict accounts personally and together, what's going on with your money. Because at the end of the day, you got to know either if you're in a hole, if you're on the surface level, or if you're above. And so, and none of them are wrong. But if I'm in a $5 hole, I at least have to admit and know that I'm in a $5 hole. And then I can work to come out of that hole. So it's just keeping strict accounts on what's coming in, what's coming out, keeping those daily records on what's being spent. But then also understanding that it's okay to start from zero, or it's okay to, well, now we can go way past zero. Don't let you go into negative 100,000. But just knowing where you're at, and it's okay. And I think as people in relationships, either families, couples, husbands, wives, it's okay to be where you're at and grow from there. And so I think that's just one thing that has really helped us. It's okay. It's okay. Wherever we're at, it's okay. Now let's get to that next level.
Both of y'all rang bells. No, go ahead, Kimo.
Side note on that, Daron has a spreadsheet. So every time we go out to eat, or just even if we go to the 7-Eleven, he literally will pull out the spreadsheet on his phone and dial that number in, put that number in. It doesn't matter where we are. He will be stopping everything at that moment to put everything on this spreadsheet. And I told him, I said, this irritates me. I don't like it. I understand it. I respect it because you want to know where every dime goes, but that's not something or a way that I'm comfortable with doing it because I think it's annoying. But those are conversations that we continuously have. When he says keep strict accounts, he knows that that is a trigger word for me, keeping these strict accounts, because he'll pull it out in a restaurant and start punching his numbers in on his spreadsheet.
I gotta know.
You guys hit two. You both rang two bells, and I'm going to ring again. One is in the case of Daron, the unknown is threatening. That's and there is some science to that. Like, whatever you imagine could be wrong is always worse than what's actually wrong. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you know what it is, the monster is always a lot smaller than you imagine. The monster in the closet is never as big as the monster. So, when I would go to 7-Eleven and pull out my spreadsheet, I'm not gonna judge you, brother. But I'm saying that you do this idea that if both partners at least know. So it's not, oh, you spent up all the money. No, it's, here's where we are. No, you didn't spend up all the money. Maybe we're not, you know what I'm saying? Knowledge and shared information is important, as opposed to just like generally assuming that things are good or bad. Because I've seen a family where they get in trouble because they thought everything was fine because they didn't know. And, if they were paying attention, they would realize that the things went off the rails 7 months ago. But it felt good to me, so we just kept going, But the other thing, Kimo, you said when you talked about the list of goals, you said no matter how ridiculous the goals. And that goes to your ability to talk about your hopes and dreams and not feel judged, and not feel like that's silly, or not feel like, I want to, my late father, he had a dream. He wanted to visit every military academy.
Yeah.
He's planned the summer because he was just that guy. And he had a wife, and it wasn't my mother, it was his first wife, who was like, if that's what you really want to do, let's plan how to do it. Like you said, not, you're a grown man. Why would you want to, why do you care? She also wanted to meet Mickey Mouse. He met Mickey Mouse when he was in his 70s. He made up his mind. He was going to go to California and actually meet. I'm just saying, these are examples of goals that could be easily ridiculed by your partner.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll never do them, but you got to be in a space where you can have those hopes and dreams. But here's where those two ideas, no matter how ridiculous the goal and I need to know, come together. Usually when you investigate the so-called ridiculous goal and you seriously look and you ask the question, so how much would it cost to do this? I could tell you how many times you find out, actually, it's not as crazy as I thought it might be. It's not as expensive as we thought. It's not out of the, we can actually do this if you really want to do it. And that's the beauty of, no matter how ridiculous, and let's at least find out. As opposed to assuming it's too expensive, it's too ridiculous, it's too out of the way, it's too outside our budget. And when you could put that, no matter how ridiculous, let's find out, let's not guess, let's know, then you have the foundation of, hey, he had this ridiculous goal, but we achieved it. In my current relationship, I remember early on, she was like, I want to go to the Maldives. Now. And I'm like, where is the Maldives? I've heard of it. And I'm like, nah. No, but when I was like, okay, let's figure out how much. It turned out it didn't cost as much as we thought. It turned out, in other words, it turned out it was doable. And once it was doable, we were partners and okay, let's make it happen. And I got to tell you, it was one of the most amazing things that I ever did without ever having it as a personal goal of mine, because I barely knew where it was, much less. I just think you guys, for wrapping up this conversation, hit that perfect thing that we talked about goals, we talked about values, but this safe space of no matter how ridiculous, and let's know, let's not guess, let's not estimate, let's know. So keep irritating each other as you are. I think it's working well. Keep annoying each other. But no, seriously, this is really beautiful. Listen, I can keep going on and on, you already were two of the people I, just admired separate and apart. And this is my first time talking to you together. So now I'm even more fascinated by you. But what's the best way, if you wrap this up, for our audience to continue to follow what you're doing, to learn more about your business, Kimo, the services you provide, give us your websites, your socials, anything you want our audience to be able to kind of continue to watch and learn from you.
Yeah, sure. So my website is KimoBentley.com. That's my first and last name. And Instagram handle is I am Kimo Bentley.
And for me, all of my social handles are Daron Pressley, just full name Daron Pressley. And one other thing that I was going to say really quickly, and also my website is DaronAPressley.com. But one thing I was going to say, Alfred, really quick is, it's one of those things where we don't hope, we don't wish, we do. We don't hope, we don't wish, we do. And I appreciate this, and I appreciate the time that you've given us today.
You guys are great. Now I got to get together with you, like in real life, over dinner or something.
Yes,
so I can watch this show.
You
I can be part of the studio audience.
It'll be at the end of the dinner. It'll be at the end of the dinner.
So thank you so much for being my guest on Your Money, Your Life. I really, really appreciate you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, another great edition of Your Money, Your Life. Man, I got some great friends. I have such a great time. This episode of Your Money, Your Life has been brought to you by Prudential. I'm Alfred Edmond Jr., Senior Vice President and Executive Editor at Black Enterprise. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you next time.